Thank you for showing up tonight. This was a pretty busy place. It was right across the street from the old Capitol Theater, if you all know that. I felt I wasn't expected to be there. I thought I was a stranger when I went in there. I didn't have much exposure in society, but these things impressed me. This was directly across from the Capitol Theater, which was on South Street.
Yeah, we're gonna have a picture of it.
And that part of the city, this is the old brick building, and then the Walgreens drugstore down at the bottom. That was a hangout for us who worked at Upjohn's, and at the end of the workday, we would all meet there and have a cup of coffee and talk about how bad our days were. And across the street from that was the old post office. That was quite a building. It was replaced by the Public Works post office that's on West Michigan Avenue. When they tore this down, it was just before the war. The property became a collection spot for medals and everything else that was needed for the war. I don't know if any of you remember that or not, but that was also used as a parking lot after it was torn down. I kind of felt sad they tore it down at the time, but then they replaced it with a square post office. It didn't have much of any character, but I loved it. This is old Schensel's here, and I don't know whether you knew it or not. They had a kind of a coffee shop next to it on the south side, and I became his cook for about 5 or 6 months. Never cooked anything before, but when somebody said don't cook it so much, I would practically not cook it at all. But I derived home. Schensel's was a man who was a Jewish person, and he had a Catholic Irish wife, and they were real great together. This is the old Park Cafe, which I got accustomed to going to it for about 6 or 8 months, and I got acquainted with people. Next to that is the old, can't remember the name of the building.
Oh, the park building.
Park building. The top
It's
floor.
Indian too. Yeah.
The top floor was a big dance hall, and a lot of weddings and so forth were up there dances.
And this was right across the street, right across South Street. Okay, so. Yes.
The library, what a place, what a place. When I worked at Southern Paper Company, I thought I was quite a provider of facts. And every Sunday, I would come down to the library and use the card system that they had. And then I'd go to the back and tell the guys whatever they wanted to know about a certain thing.
So I think that's been replaced now by just looking it up on your phone.
Or your computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a question. This is the place that my mother, just about every Sunday, would take us to the park there. And they used to have a confection truck with gold trimmings and painted red and had popcorn in the inside. It came up there. And on Sunday nights, the Salvation Army would leave their office or their church, which was on Road Street, about a block from the park. And they would march up to the park, playing their instruments. And that was a normal thing for us to go to, because my mom took care of 3 of us boys, and she didn't have much money to take us to a regular soda fountain. These were the heart of my mother's love. She loved movies. Michigan was, that was on...
Right, the Michigan was right next to the tall bank building, the American National Bank building. So it's been gone for quite a long, actually some of the walls are still there inside the other building, but the front's been gone for a long time. The Orpheum was right across the street, pretty much where the subway is today. And then the new theater was down where the Radisson is now. That's the bottom one, this is the new theater.
The new theater used to have a series that attracted kids. And they had a Buck Rogers series that kept it going for about 10 weeks or so to come back. Well, what else could you do with probably a dime to go inside? The nice thing about those theaters was they had a popcorn machine in the lobby area. It drove you nuts.
Now, you told me that one time you and your mom and your brothers tried to go and see, what was it, how many movies in one day on a Saturday?
On a Sunday,
Sunday?
we went to 4 theaters on Sunday. We rushed from one theater to another, and we caught the beginning at each one of the theaters, which was remarkable. The Fuller Theater was our favorite because in most cases they had double features. One Thanksgiving Day they advertised a double feature.
There's the Fuller.
At the Fuller Theater. We got there about 1 o'clock, and the first movie we saw was one that wasn't advertised, but the picture that was advertised didn't show up until 7 o'clock that night, and we were in that theater until 8 o'clock.
I guess they lived on hot dogs and popcorn, you know, and donuts from Cade's, and going to the Coney Island. Let's not forget the Coney Island.
Now, the State Theater, when it opened in 1927, I think, or 26, became quite interesting to me in my life, because at one time, Pat Heavey, who was the manager of the theater, asked me to take pictures whenever any of the movie stars came into town. Well, believe it or not, I took pictures of Sal Mineo. Remember Sal Mineo? The oceanographer or whatever it was.
Jacques Cousteau?
Jacques Cousteau came. And then there was a young lady that came, and her last name escapes me, but they said that she lived as a child in Vicksburg, Michigan. So, and when the theater opened up, in 1926 or 27, kids could get into the theater for a dime. And they gave you a card, and if you fill that card up with 10 shows, you could bring your dad or your mother to the theater, and they would let her in.
So this is the fire curtain,
Which most people have not seen.
most people haven't seen the fire curtain because they only have it down when they really, really need to. And when we were doing the Hidden Kalamazoo tour, the folks who own the theater, Stephanie Hinman, was thrilled. She said, we'll put the fire curtain down for you so you can see it. And if you've been in the state, you know that it's a Spanish courtyard. And the fire curtain is the fourth wall of that Spanish courtyard. You can see part of it there because it's not all the way down, but it's a gate, and it looks out through the gate from the courtyard. It kind of completes the illusion. So it's a beautiful thing. They don't have it down very often, but it's absolutely gorgeous.
That reminds me of the fact the State Theater about every month sometimes would have, it happened for about 6 months, the big bands would travel from Detroit to Chicago, and then they would lay over here, and for $1 you could hear the band and see a movie, and then they would have this curtains down, and the music would start coming through the curtain, and the band would play Henry Bussey and Benny Goodman and all those came, but for $1 you got quite a buy. When you go to any one of those today, you got to go to the bank to be able to get it. The Capitol was a great theater. It had a balcony, as did the State Theater and the Fuller, but the Orpheum and the New Theater did not have a. I got to tell you a story about going to a new theater. My mother used to buy us high tops in the fall. You got your knife in your pocket on your high top. Well, I put them on, and we went across the street where the new theater was, and I got at the top of the aisle, and I started walking down it, and I kind of tripped myself, and I didn't catch myself until I got at the bottom of the theater.
Oh my goodness.
But those are experiences you never forget. Now the old Uptown was, I think that was built right after the war, and that was on Eleanor and North Burton.
Right, and right here. I'll say it's not. It is working. Okay. This is the Salvation Army building, which is still there. So this is where they used to march from here down to the park and do their concert. And the Uptown Theater
Is where the museum is now. Okay?
The old camera shop and studio, I can't think of their last name. Robinson Studio was where they used to sell cameras, and I bought my first big camera in that store there. That was a Speed Graphics store. And they also thought that I was quite a good customer, because when I got engaged and my wife got her wedding gown, they took a picture of my wife in her wedding gown and colored it and gave it to me as a prize. So that's one of the reasons I love Kalamazoo. The Fuller Theater was our Saturday matinee. My mother used to work at the Rosenbaum Paint Company. They used to call it Two Legs. And on Saturdays, we'd go to meet my mother at Rosenbaum's. They let us in. She was working on one of the sewing machines, and I could sit right next to her as long as I behaved myself. This is the Rosenbaum building. It was on the third floor that her work area was. And then it did not, at first did not have an elevator, and they built that elevator just before the war, I think, the one that stands outside. The Civic Theater was my projected into theater. I did some shoot plays down there. But one time I was drinking beer with a fellow photographer, and the director of the Civic was in there too. It was a saloon that was on Westnage, and Sid Spade was the director at that time, and he was there drinking, and he was talking about he wished that somebody would come to the theater and take pictures of their plays. They had their own dark room in one of the dressing rooms, which was turned over to me, and I was a photographer for 12 years, so I have a great deal of credit given Civic, a great deal of credit for having me become the photographer that I was, so.
Yeah, and when he got married, they had their reception down in the green room. So, as did I with my first marriage.
Now, the Upjohn Company, see where that red arrow is on the side there? There was a pilot lab that was on that building, and it was built half above ground and half below ground. And in the summer, they would have the windows halfway open, and then I was one day drawing some acetone into an open bucket, and somebody went by as I was leaving, went by the window smoking a cigarette. I could see this blue line. And fortunately, I went through a door and stopped, but I'm quite sure that was going to be an explosion. Now they're building right in front there the old card company, and that was part of the Upjohn Company. Now, the bank building was replaced after a fire by a haberdasher shop of Men's Fire, and it amazed me that they were pumping piles into the ground before they built the building, because the water table is 17 feet. And they had put a lot of piles in it. And I remember when they built it. So, of course, that's the old front of the old First National Bank. And then I think sometime just before the war, they built the Michigan Theater. That was between that and the bank.
We just, I've been in and out of these buildings because with my work with the city, I work with the people who are developing them. And right now, Tom Huff is working on this building, And this building is now joined to it. So I went into this section, and there was, when they built buildings downtown, quite often they didn't necessarily build a whole new building. They just kind of tore the front off and put a new front on it. And I think that's what they did with this building, because what I was seeing on the walls was probably late 19th century wallpaper, and then in a few places, Michigan Theater era posters. I have to say the Michigan Theater, the front is no longer there, but part of the body is still there in the building. So that's, it's more economical to do it that way if it sounds, so, yeah. And this wonderful bank building, a couple of interesting stories about that, it was meant to look like a giant crystal. And when it's all lit up at night, you can see the different tiers of light on this. It really does look like something really monumental. And in Easter time during the Depression, they used to have a chorus on top of the bank, singing with speakers so that they could be heard within a mile of downtown. You could hear a choir on top of the bank singing. Now, it sounded like music. If I was up there, it would probably be screaming rather than singing. But it was, I think, and then they also had spotters up there during the war that were officially had to go up in the cold and kind of keep an eye on the city from the top of the tallest building in town.
The bus station, that used to, I don't recall where it used to be, but,
Right next to Siobhan's.
no, I know that, I meant the old bus station.
Oh, before this one?
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
Schiavone's was upstairs next door. Oh, you're gonna put me up?
There you go. Is that better? There you go.
I hate hanging legs.
Yeah, so do I.
Okay, you got another one
Yeah.
here? The old Kalamazoo Sled Company. Any of you remember that? In the winter, they would build summer furniture, outdoor summer furniture. In the summer, they would make sleds. Well, we had quite a challenge there because they had stacks and stacks of wood that they were about 12 feet off the ground. And as a kid, you try to jump from one stack to another. And then to top that all off, there were 3 sets of tracks that were between there and the gravel company that was across the tracks there, and we would run up on where all the gravel was and run down and have fun with the gravel following us down as we ran down.
Where was that?
Do you remember, where's the sled company?
The sled company is at Crosstown and know where Sheldon Street is? Well, Sheldon is two parts of it. One, it was on a level with the sled company that went to Vine Street. The second one went from the what is Crosstown now to Gibson Street.
I think that part of it is gone completely now, but if you think of when you're driving out Vine, East Vine, and you're on the brick part, and that big blue building is on your right, Sheldon Street is right there by Cal Blue. So it was kind of in that area.
You know, we lived on Vine when they put the bricks in many years ago, and I was watching how they built the street for the bricks, and that was quite a job. Before they put the bricks down, they'd make sure that all the sand that it went into was just spotless, and they didn't walk on them, but they would put brick by brick for each one. So that was something that fascinated me. Borges Hospital. They took me to the old Borges to do something with my adenoids. And when I woke up, I thought they missed what they were doing because they circumcised me at the time.
And at that point in time, because he was like 5, 6 years old, he didn't speak English yet. He hadn't started school. So, and his mom wasn't with him because she was in the hospital for something else. So, yeah. We have it easy today, folks.
Surprise! My dad worked on the new Borges for about a week or so, and he had his problem and left it. But anyway, I remember the old one.
That was down on Portage,
Near Lovell Street.
near Lovell Street. Yeah, yeah.
Now, we lived on Pitcher Street in the second 200 block from East Michigan Avenue. And we had rented one of the row houses, 221, I think it was 221 South Pitcher Street. They would make gas by cooking coal, and as it burned, they would extract the gas out of the coal and store them in those tanks. But that was quite an operation, fascinated me. They burn it to a certain degree, and then they would push it out in a big railroad car and have it cool down. Then they would sell the coke that came out of it. So they were doing pretty good. This is St. Augustine's School and Church. I was married in the church, and Father Hackett, Monsignor Hackett, excuse me, was a priest at the time, and I had my communion, everything there, and Hackett said, "You don't learn that prayer because every time you read it, you learn something." So we didn't, but we were one of probably the last ones that were married in the old church.
The new church that's now St. Augustine's on Michigan Avenue was built, they got married in 1949, and it was completed like the next year. So, and this was pretty much where the where the old county health department was, that modern building. Next to the Park Trades building. That's where it was. Okay. And the picture up here is the altar. What the altar looked like. Well, this one is my dad, and this one is his best man, his younger brother, pinning his corsage on for the wedding. And they're out behind the church, which is why I put that in here.
Yeah, he got me to church an hour and a half before the ceremony. I thought he had a gun or something. The building there on Portage Street, what's the name of it?
Well, it had a lot of different names. I know it by its most historic name. The AUV building was built by German immigrants to Kalamazoo, where they had their Arbeiters, their Turnverein, where they did exercises and did the gymnastic things that Germans loved to do. But in later years, it became, the roller rink was on the 3rd floor, I think, And
Top floor.
the top floor was the roller rink, and it was a banked wooden track. I got to skate on it once. The second floor was a bowling alley, and the ground floor was various restaurants on the front and back. For those of you who remember the 60s, you might remember the back door. Okay. If you remember the 60s, maybe you really weren't there.
The Sokolas had their first pizza parlor on the bottom floor when we had the tornado went through. It blew them out of business. So
This building and the St. Augustine's school that they had at that time were the two buildings that were the biggest ones that were lost downtown. And this is the only building in Kalamazoo where the people at the state who do the historical markers let us leave the historical marker up even though the building is gone. And if you notice on the corner of Old Peninsula, there's a sign for the AUV hall, and underneath it there's another little marker that says this building was destroyed in the tornado of 1980. Someone stole that sign and they said, oh, we just found it on the street when the cops pulled it out of their pickup truck.
I don't know whether you remember a tornado when it went by. It hit Gilmore's pretty hard, and they said they found women's underparels in Comstock.
He says, my dad, of course, he was friends with all the other Italian photographers in town at the time, which was Schiavone and Guarino and several others. And he was on the phone with Al Schiavone at the time when the tornado was coming, and Al kept saying, Lance, and my dad would talk, Lance, my dad would talk, Lance, I have to get off the phone. There's a tornado coming down the street. I need to go to the basement.
Those were the days. This is Portage. You remember Denoyers that was on Portage? And right next to that, down further, was the old Club Hollywood, if you remember that.
Yep, so this right now is, I don't think there's anything on this corner now. The medical school is about here, and then the big lab building that was up John Pfizer is on East Level Street there. And then parking lot over on this side. So.
This building, Ari Fair building, was it's a shoe store now. Oakens. The second floor, in my day, there were 13 bowling alleys on the second floor, and a billiard room. And I was a pin setter at 14. And I thought one time I was doing what they call free bowling. And I had 10 straight strikes. And the last ball I was going to shoot, I was going to have a 300 game if I hit the head pin. Oh, I missed the head pin.
Now this, you said this was like a used car, a new car lot, or a used car?
Used car, that was a Denoyers park, used car lot. I was surprised when I recalled that they had a couple new Chevys there, and they used to put the price of the car pasted on the window. And I saw a car with a $757 brand new Chevrolet. Today you gotta sell your house to buy it.
Yeah, so this is East South Street, and this is Kalamazoo Avenue. So right here is where the Alamo is today. Yeah, Portage. Did I say Kalamazoo? Portage. Yes, Portage and East South Street.
The first row, right off the street, there was a Pullman car restaurant for a number of years,
Oh, yeah,
right in that area there.
Well, like a diner, an old style diner that was from a Pullman car. I couldn't find a picture. I really looked for that. I couldn't find one.
This is Washington Square in its heyday. Probably was one of the nicest squares in the city. And they used to have doctors and dentists in that corner building there. Across the street on this side was a home loan saving company. Down further was a Washington school. And I went to Washington school for, I think, 2 years. And I had to walk through there every time. They had a donut shop that was on the way to school. And sometimes I'd be walking with a friend of mine, and the bakery that was there came out with a basket full of rolls, and they dumped them into a barrel. And this guy said, well, let's go over and get a couple of those. We did.
I put this in because my dad's one of the few people that I know that actually occasionally rode Kalamazoo streetcars back in the day. And this was one of the pictures that it was of the car in motion.
You know, one of the things that used to get me about the streetcars, Wrigley's gum had dispensers on all the railroad their cars. You put a nickel in, you get a pack of spearmint or Wrigley. And when you got into the streetcar, you could smell the sugar and the Wrigley's. You know, for a nickel, that was quite a big deal. This is Mills Park. And the day before,
I remember going to this wading pool. It was huge. Of course, I was 4, but.
And then this was the zoo. We had bears and raccoons, not any really big animals, you know, but they were there. And it was just such a neat thing to have a tiny town like Kalamazoo, even if it was kind of a little rinky-dink zoo, it was still pretty cool. And this was the entrance to the bathhouse. That was up the hill. This is now a flat area. If you take the drive into the park from Lover's Lane, you get the stream, the creek there off to one side, and this area was between the stream and the hillside that's there. That's where the wading pool was.
oh, do you remember the old market? This was on Mill Street, where Mill goes into East Michigan Avenue. You place it all right?
Yep. And this, the Merchants Publishing building, this little building is still there. The land bank owns it now, and I think they're redeveloping it. But so this was right down in that area, was where the original
Farmers Market was. Unreliable.
Is from my book, 1 Hour in Our History. Yeah, I took these pictures because they said that Lincoln had talked in Kalamazoo, and photography was not very well known at that time, but I wanted to make a record of this, and thank God I did.
Yep. Just quick side note, the books are available at Kazoo Books. There are more copies, brand new ones available.
I call it a photographic essay. No words in it, just the pictures.
And I really love this one because that's City Hall. I mean, you know, because it says 241, and that's right on the front steps of City Hall.
Oh, the stories. We had the picture taken together. You know that Sharon is one of 4 girls we had. And we had bookend boys. And the oldest and the youngest were boys.
Yep. And then I took my dad down to StoryCorps because he's got so many stories. They only gave us 45 minutes, but so his record, or his memories are, you know, as part of the Collection Library of Congress that we all hear every Friday at WWK. So